topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show, where we bring you the finest experts in the field of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Today's going to be quite a different show today. Starting today, the first Friday of the month, we are going to be doing our I'm Right show, which is part of the Ask the Expert group. And the reason why I decided that many of you don't know that I had a very popular morning show in Miami on a Salem station. And it was probably, we even went ahead of the top AM station in Miami. We had so many great guests on. It was really about conservative politics. And it got to a point where there were so many people that were threatening my life, threatening my co-host's life, that it just became impossible to do. Plus, at that time, certain platforms, which I'm not going to name, were taking shows like ours off the air. And it's your great free speech. But I've made a decision. There's so many things going on in the world. And there's so many people that are, I'm just going to put it to you this way, are so uneducated that I said, this is the time to bring back the I'm Right show. I'm your host, Steve-O. And if you have a question, you can write it on our chat line. And I promise you, I will get in as many questions as I can. I want people to know, because having such a popular show as I did, I still get probably hundreds of emails a month from people who would listen to my morning show, and some conservative, some liberal, some independent, and a lot of them, especially the liberals, would say, and this is the thing that they would just drive me crazy. Oh, you listen to Fox. And I'm going to tell you something. I do not hardly ever watch Fox for my information. I go to the shows like Pundit and Newsmax and Steve Bannon, Real American Voice, Charlie Kirk, and a lot of the .govs. I don't depend on Fox, and I sure don't depend on CNN or MSNBC like a lot of you liberals do. And it was so funny. This is kind of about the show. I was listening to an interview of people in New York that were asked why they're voting for Mondami. And I was shocked. I wanted to hear some policy replies, but instead I heard things like, I loved his vibe. I think he's a nice person. I think he cares. And of course, the number one response was, we're going to get everything for free. And I hope one of the things you learn by this show is there's no such thing as free. And it was like people are so uneducated. We have a major shutdown right now. And anytime that I hear someone tell me it's the Republicans' fault, it is so easy to understand who they are because they're people that don't understand what's really going on. And I'm going to explain to you today what is going on with the shutdown. And it's funny, even CNN and MSNBC are actually starting to take the side of the Republicans. Can you believe that? Two of the most liberal news sources out there saying that it is the Republicans' fault. But I'm going to break it down for you. It is so simple. People say, oh, the president can get the country open. The president has nothing to do with this. It's Congress and the Senate. So our Congress voted now 14 times to open up the country. 14 times. So that means the Democrats voted 14 times not to open up the country. I hear people say they need to negotiate. I'm going to explain to you why there is nothing to negotiate. I don't think people really understand what is going on in this resolution that the Republicans are voting have voted for to keep the country open. And I'm going to explain to you why the liberals are holding this country hostage and people not getting their paychecks. Uh, This has caused so much trouble. And I'm going to explain to you, it's just really simple. Because you see, now it's in the Senate's hands. It's out of the Congress hands. They've already voted. Okay, they voted to approve a clean bill. So now they have this clean bill that, by the way, last year the Democrats voted in favor of this clean bill. That's what makes this thing so crazy. So you've got it's not who gets the most votes. 'Cause you're saying like people keep saying, well, Senate, they've got four more votes than the Democrats do. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to have at least 65% vote. So that means that in the Senate, that the Republicans have to get six more votes for them to approve this bill. And the Democrats have dug in and they have voted 14 times not to accept this bill. It's the Republicans have done, in fact, not only have the Republicans done everything they can, you put blame on the president. And it's funny because the president said, you know what, I want to get this country open. And he has come up with ways to fund this so people don't go without food. And still, the Democrats voted down. They just did it the other day. The president had a way to come up with funding to help these SNAP programs, and the Democrats still voted it down. So who's to blame? You can't blame President Trump. President Trump doesn't have a vote on this. The only one to blame are the Democrats. All they have to do right now is sign this bill off, the same bill that last year they signed 13 times. Sign this bill off, and everybody gets paid, everybody eats. It is nowhere near the Republicans' fault. Now, I'm really going to open up something for you that I bet you many of the Democrats don't even know what's in this bill. We are $38 trillion in the hole. We don't have any more money to throw away anymore. And President Trump is doing everything he can. Do you know, just one thing, because the president was on today, he has brought in $18 trillion in new business in less than a year. Biden, best year was 1 trillion. And it wasn't in a year, it was actually in 2 years. So President Trump has brought in close to $20 trillion in new business. Countries want to do business with us now. But this bill that the Democrats want us to sign, do you realize it's going to add $1.5 trillion to our budget? Add, not, I mean, here we are, we're trying to cut the budget back. And in the middle of this, they want to add $1.5 trillion. Now, listen, I know some of you out there are going to go, Steve O is BSing me. He's wrong. He's a conservative. Go to a legitimate, when I say legitimate, go to a .gov and you will see what I'm telling you is true. Now, I want you, this is what's really crazy. These are just some of the things that the Democrats want us to sign off on. $500 million for liberal news outlets. You realize we've been paying these news outlets, these liberal news outlets that are strictly liberal, but for example, my tax dollars are paying for it, and I'm a conservative. Why should I have to pay liberal news outlets? You know what? If you can't make it through advertising, then get out. But the Democrats want us to give $500 million to these liberal news outlets. How about this one? $24.6 million for climate resilience in Honduras. The hell does that mean? Why do I care what's happening in Honduras? I care about what's happening in America, and those senators should be doing the same. How about this one? They want to give $13.4 million for civic engagement in Zimbabwe. I mean, doesn't that bother you liberals at all? How about $3.9 million for LGBTQ democracy grants in the Western Balkans? This is insanity. $2.9 million for, listen to this, desert locust risk reduction in Africa. And I'm giving you some of the less crazy ones, believe it or not. This is what they want to spend. This is why they are keeping air traffic controllers from getting paid. This is why they are hurting the SNAP. This is why they won't sign. How about this one? $2 million for organizing for feminist democratic principles in Africa. I mean, they want to send all this money over to foreign countries. And folks, I got to tell you, we have enough problems here. But it's amazing. You know, we have a president that has stopped 8 wars now in foreign countries. I don't hear anybody talk about that. I hear them say, so what has Trump done? You know, yesterday, and this might not be a big deal to you at all. Do you know President Trump made a deal with the two top, it's called the skinny injection. You might have heard about it. Ozempic, Madura. He made a deal with them. It's called favored nations. And that means that they cannot charge us any more than the lowest price that another country pays. Now, I don't know if you know this or not, but there are name brand products that we might pay $90 for, and other countries you're paying $10 for. I- This has been going on forever. We, the American taxpayer, have been making up the difference for them charging less in these other countries. But I got to tell you, Madura, Ozempic, those are products that people have probably been saying they're for the rich. Let me tell you, those products range anywhere from 1,000 to $1,300 a month. And basically, they're for diabetics, but they do make you lose weight. And you go, that's that's cosmetic. Well, no. When you have a weight problem, it causes high blood pressure, it causes sleep apnea, it causes so many heart condition. And there's a drug out there. It's so expensive. President Trump has got the price down. Still expensive, but not 1,000 or 1,300 a month. He's gotten the product down to $250 a month. What president has ever done anything like that before? And 2 months ago, he met with the three largest pharmaceutical companies that are going to do the same thing with all of their products. He is going to be saving the American people anywhere between 75 to 90% on most pharmaceutical drugs. It I mean, no one talks about that at all. I mean, the savings, people who have a weight problem, who people who have a problem with how much insulin is, can now take a product they've always wanted to take but could not afford it. And in fact, if you're on Medicaid, it's going to be like a $30 deductible. These are just some of the things that this president is doing. And getting back to this, we passed this big, beautiful bill, and the Democrats are so unhappy. The bill they signed, they're so unhappy that they want to take this bill back and try to renegotiate it. One of the biggest things in this bill that it should s- piss you off, like it has me, is they want to fund illegals' health care. I don't know if you've been to the emergency room in the last probably 6 months. It is insane in there. Because one of the things that we do, because we do have a big heart, is if it's an emergency, we will take an illegal in and treat them. But what the illegals do is if they have a cold, if they have a cough, they go to the emergency room because they know they're not going to be charged. But guess what? We are charged. It's kind of like I know 4 or 5 people who are Democrats that are saying to us that these illegals, we should be paying for them. Humanitarian. Look, when these people crossed our borders illegally, they knew what they were getting into. It's like the other night I saw where an illegal was arrested who'd been here for 30 years. And so they said, you know what? He never broke our laws. He was a good father. Been here for 30 years, no problem. It's wrong to deport him. Why didn't that same person go and do this legally 30 years ago? You know, it's not easy to become a US citizen when you do it the right way, but there's a reason for that. One of the things that we ask is, did you learn our language? So when I'm walking through Walmart and I don't hear any English at all, none. This is America. English is our number one language. And then I see people protesting in the streets. Listen, I love Mexico. I love the South American countries. And I'm all for citizenship, but I'm for it legally. They did a survey last year. Do you know over 250 million foreigners want to become a US citizen? Everybody wants to come here. The problem is we can't afford it. So now when I go to that emergency room and now have to wait 2 hours, 3 hours because there's so many people in there that aren't even going to be paying, that taxpayers are going to be paying for, or there's jobs out there, or let's say there's jobs that aren't out there because illegals are taking these jobs for a lot less. Yes, it's taking jobs away from Americans. Schools. I've heard teachers tell me it is so hard to teach now because they have these illegal children in their classroom who do not know English. Think about it. You're in a classroom and you're trying to teach the entire class, but you've got 20 or 25% of the class who does not understand English. Explain to me how that works. As funny as, and probably not so funny, we have found a lot of things going on in schools today that we didn't know. And I know that the C word, I don't know if I'm allowed to mention it, but, um, a lot of people start doing homeschool. Our parents started zooming in on their children's schooling, and we found out some of the things that were going on and being taught in school. And I was I was blown away the things that they were teaching in school that I would never want my children to learn about. I want them to learn about it from me when they're older and could understand. But some of the books that they were making these children read, and listen, I am a believer. The Lord's really is most important to me. But I also, because of, I don't judge, I don't discriminate, but and even when it comes to LBGTQ, I don't have a problem with that. But I don't want it being taught in our schools to second and third graders. And we would have never known about this if it hadn't been for the cove. Never would have known about it. We found out through it because we would sit and watch Zooming of what was going on in our classrooms. This with illegal immigration, we can't afford to take on 250 million. We can't afford to bring in 20 million, which is the number I've heard. We can't afford it. The presses have got to stop. The money maker, the machines have got to stop. And President Trump is trying to bring this country back. And, a lot of you complain about ICE. First of all, they are going by the law. They're not breaking laws. They are going by the laws. And I see, especially in Southern California, where people don't like these laws. They don't like ICE. Chicago, another city. As the other day, I read where the governor and the mayor said they're going to start arresting ICE. If you ask, I would say 90%, I'm not going to say 100%. If you would ask 90% of the people who voted for President Trump if he is doing what they voted for, they would say yes. We voted to get all the illegal immigrants out of this country. Again, come in, come in, but do it legally. I heard the head of Border Patrol say we could probably stand maybe 1 million people a year, but we've had over 20 million people come in the last 4 years under Biden. We just can't handle. Look at the crime rate that's gone up. I mean, it's funny. These people who live in Washington, D.C., I've heard them interviewed, and they would say, I would never go out to dinner. I was too afraid to go out to dinner. And you see so many restaurants in Washington, D.C. go out of business for that reason. It wasn't the economy, it was crime. It was so bad. So the president sends in troops. Now, troops can't arrest anybody, but just the fact that there was extra manpower out there, their crime went way down. People were saying, I can now go out for dinner now and not worry about it. And they said, we haven't had this like this in years. There's so much. And I got to tell you, because I talk to so many people every day, and they all say the same thing about we shouldn't be sending these immigrants back. They say, oh, this is another, and I hate to be all over, but this is our first show back. We do six, believe it or not, we do 28 other shows during the month. Well, we have a restaurant show that we do, a South Florida restaurant show that we do. We have which is part of this, our Ask the Experts, where we interview lawyers and doctors and financial people, uh, but kind of all over the place today. And we'll probably start, uh, probably next month, we'll start really zooming in on one topic. But there's so many things that I've wanted to get off my chest because I get the people who complain, and it's so sad the things that they complain about. And the things that they complain about, it what it does is it shows me they're uninformed. I mean, I have a lady that goes back and forth with me every day. And probably the biggest complaint I have is she says she's a Republican. I call her a rhino, and most people know what a rhino is. And the reason I did is she hates Trump. She has called him some of the nastiest names. She calls him I'm just going to use the short for a pedo. And I'll ask her, show me proof, because there's nothing on the books he's ever been convicted of that or even gone to trial on that. And she'll call him a rapist. And by the way, that case is getting ready to be thrown out by the Supreme Court. That's going to be a whole nother show. But she blames Trump for the shutdown. And I hope today that you understand what's holding this up? It's not the Republicans that are holding this bill up. We've already signed off on it. It's Democrats that won't sign because they want to hold Americans hostage. They want to put all the blame on President Trump. And I've given you 7 or 8 of the craziest expenditures they want to make. The biggest one is they want to put $1.5 trillion back into the big, beautiful bill to pay for illegals' health care. I don't want that. I don't want my taxpayers going there. Oh, and the other one is uh, Medicaid. You keep hearing the liberals go, oh, he's taking Medicaid away from us. That is the biggest lie. You have to understand Medicaid, that they have found so many people on Medicaid that should have never been on there. And all the new bill has done is say, look, you can keep your Medicaid, you can keep your food programs, but you've got to work. Now, all they're asking for is 20 hours a month, not a week, a month. And or show that you're going to school, working on getting a trade, but we're tired of paying for people who are laying on their couch all day long, doing nothing and getting Medicaid. Tell me what's wrong with that. Am I missing something? That's all we're asking for. We're not taking Medicaid, and we're taking Medicare or Medicaid away from illegals. Listen, I am sorry they didn't know that a real president was going to be elected when they were crossing those borders illegally. I'm sorry they brought their children. I got to tell you, Tom Holman, who heads up the ICE program, he was up against Congress, and AOC, with her progressive moves, said to him, we are sick of children being taken away from their parents. What you are doing is so wrong. Well, first of all, it's kind of going back, but you remember the cages? Remember them blaming President Trump for putting kids in cages? If you don't remember that, that was a big in his first when he was first elected president the first time. And there was some great news reporting that showed pictures and everything. It was Obama who built those cages for those kids. It wasn't President Trump, it was Obama. And when they proved it, that shut the Democrats up right away. But Tom Holman said, if you're pulled over for a DUI by the police and you've got kids in the car, your kids don't go with you to jail. Those kids are separated, and they either find a relative or a sponsor. Uh, and he was right. These people have broken the law. They're being deported. And with all the lawsuits against President Trump, because they're doing everything they can to stop them, realize this: those 20 million illegals that were allowed into our country, and they were allowed, there was a reason why. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to realize that they were looking for votes because, here they are letting these people come into our country. And they were also looking for the maps, the redistricting of maps. Because if they could show more liberals in a certain part of the country, that's why they were flying these illegals around the country, that they could change the settings of the map and make the map blue so they could get more congressmen and senators. It wasn't out of the goodness of their heart. Biden administration could care less about these people. They knew right under their nose there was hundreds and thousands of little kids missing that they had no idea where they were. Can you imagine that? That was one of the first things President Trump did. He made sure that these kids were found, and they are finding so many of these kids, and they're trying to find out where their parents are because a lot of these kids were brought in by coyotes. They're runners, and people pay them a lot of money to come over with kids and make it look like it's a family. Again, I apologize today for being all over the board. Gosh, I'm probably going back at least 3 years of things I wanted to get in on a 50-minute show. Um, I was talking about with Medicaid and Medicare, they want to take people off of Medicaid that don't belong to be on Medicaid. Think they are doing the right thing. There was a liberal judge, and that's really who's causing a lot of our problems today are these liberal judges. And you're going to see within the next 2 or 3 weeks, there is going to be a judge that is going to be arrested. His name is Judge Bobart. And he has been involved in a lot of the cases that President Trump has been involved in. And they have proof that, I guess the best word is, he allowed cases to come before him that no other judge would have. And this judge is probably the crookedest judge. Got to be careful. He's about to get um, impeached. I think I said arrested. He's going to be impeached within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Um, there was a judge, and we're talking about the SNAP funds. There was a judge who just came out and said that uh, President Trump's administration has to fund the SNAP program. Well, the SNAP program costs us $8 billion a month. We have a fund that's set up for emergencies, and we have $4.5 billion left in this fund. That's it. I mean, it's a lot of money, but it remember it costs 8 billion a month for the SNAP program. This judge is saying you got to take that $4.5 billion that's left in this emergency fund and feed these children. First of all, it's only going to feed them for 2 weeks. That's the first thing. What happens after that? But what happens? I'm here in South Florida. This is hurricane season still for us. I mean, look what happened in the Caribbean. Look what happened over there. What happens if next week we have a major hurricane? Y- I mean, it easily, what happens to that fund that the judge took all that money that was not meant for this, and there's no more money left in the coffers? It would be, I guess, nice if it could even fulfill a whole month, but it's not going to. So these are that President Trump is up against daily, on a daily, it just every time I turn around, there's some other liberal going after him. Now, we only have a few minutes left, and I just want to just go over this because one of the things I wanted to talk about was Zoran Mondani. I got to tell you, people, you New Yorkers, you forgot about 9/11, and you asked me how could I say, not all Muslims are bad. Mondani stood next to a fundraiser who was admitted a 9/11 accomplice, admitted, stood right next to him, shaking hands. Mondani never has had a job, and now he's going to run a city with 8 million people. And then we just found out that only 14% of New Yorkers even voted. So now when we hear people go, "Oh, we won in Virginia, we won in New York, we won in New Jersey." What did you win? You won blue states. They're already blue. But this new mayor, you mark my words, is going to cause so much problem for New York because the things he's promising, lowering the rent, he can't do that. The free buses, do you think those buses run on air? Someone's got to pay for them. The free grocery stores they tried in Kansas City, and it was the biggest failure. Who's going to pay for that? He said he's going to tax the rich, but the rich are all leaving New York. I've talked to 6 realtors here in South Florida. Their phones are ringing off the wall from people in New York calling them. And then you see them saying, "I voted because it's got good vibe." Hey, you know what? That's going to be it for us today. We will be back with you next month with more. And you know what? If you want to email me, it's Stephen, Steven, at AskTheExpertsRadioShow.com. And we read all of our email. That's going to do it for us today. Thank you, Juan, our great producer. And we'll see you next week with more Ask the Experts.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.